The neon glow of the city pulsed overhead as Kira leaned into the curve, her hover bike humming beneath her. The air rippled in her wake, the AI-driven traffic parting just enough for her to thread through at 300 kilometers per hour. The pizza box strapped to her bike's rear storage emitted a faint, savory warmth, pepperoni and truffle oil, the usual for Mr. Alden in the Platinum Spire. Nobody actually believed these were just pizzas. Not at these speeds. Not with couriers like her. The city had given up manual driving a decade ago. Too many accidents, too many variables. AI control pods moved in perfect sync, gliding along magnetic lanes, never deviating, never hesitating. But the rich? They still wanted things now. And sometimes, now required a human touch. Kira's neural interface flickered in her periphery, her reflexes enhanced by military-grade synaptic boosters, her reactions faster than any AI's safety protocols would allow. The system called them express delivery specialists. The underground called them ghostwriters. A delivery was never just a delivery. She banked hard, skimming between two freight drones, the turbulence rattling her teeth. The spire loomed ahead, its landing pad already lit. As she touched down, the biometric scanner flashed green. "Pizza for Alden," she announced, handing over the box. The guard took it without a word, but his eyes lingered just a second too long. Kira smirked. Let him wonder. Back on her bike, a new ping lit her display, an encrypted job. Coordinates in the industrial sector. No pizza logo this time. She revved the engine. Some deliveries were worth the rush. Kira's apartment was a tiny, dimly lit cube on the 47th floor of a nondescript tower in the transit district, close enough to the skyways for quick launches, far enough from the glittering cores to avoid scrutiny. She kicked off her boots, the adrenaline of the night's run still humming in her veins. The holoscreen on her wall flickered with muted news, another corporate merger, another protest crushed by drone enforcement. Nothing unusual. She tossed her helmet onto the counter and opened the fridge, grabbing a synth beer. The cool can hissed as she cracked it open, the taste bitter and familiar. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened window, sharp features, dark eyes, the faint scar along her jaw from a near miss last year. Ignorance is armor. That's what the older couriers always said. Don't ask. Don't dig. Just ride. But Kira had always been too curious for her own good. She pulled up her neural interface, scrolling through the night's logs. 6 deliveries. 5 pizzas, or at least, boxes that smelled like pizza. 1 encrypted data chip, slipped into the lining of a specialty calzone for a client in the financial spire. She didn't know what was on it. She didn't want to know. But she remembered the way the recipient's hands had trembled when he took it. Her holoscreen pinged, a message from Dex, one of the few couriers she trusted. You see the new eval reports? Kira frowned. What reports? They're scrubbing the archives. Old school stuff. Our old school stuff. A cold prickle ran down her spine. She knew, they all knew, that they hadn't ended up here by accident. The reflexes, the instincts, the way they could process split-second decisions that left even the most advanced AI lagging, that wasn't just natural talent. It had been cultivated. Kira closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. She remembered the tests. The endless, subtle tests. Kindergarten, stacking blocks, but really, it was about how fast your hands moved when the teacher accidentally knocked them over. Middle school, obstacle courses disguised as gym class, but the kids who hesitated even a fraction too long got quietly reassigned to alternative curriculum. High school, the swimming team. The cross-country team. No contact sports. Nothing where you could hide in a crowd. Just speed. Just precision. And the ones who didn't make the cut. They vanished into the regular world like they'd never been part of something bigger. Like they'd never been watched. Kira's fingers tightened around the beer can. Dex's message blinked again. They're cleaning house. Be careful. She didn't respond. Instead, she pulled up an old file, one she'd stolen from a delivery 2 years ago, one she'd never dared to open fully. A list of names. Schools. Test scores. And at the top, a logo she'd only ever seen in whispers. Project Mercury. The first manned spaceflight program. The first humans pushed beyond limits. But we're not going to space, Kira thought. We're already here. She shut the file. Outside, the city lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Somewhere, a new delivery was waiting. Kira smirked as Brad's message glowed on her wrist display. You up? I'm off shift. Could use a visit. She tapped a quick reply, be there in 20, before stripping off her Courier gear and swapping it for something tighter, something that would make Brad's already limited brain power short-circuit entirely. Perfect timing, she thought. She needed the release. And if she was being honest with herself, she also needed to know. Brad's apartment was in one of the mid-tier residential blocks, nice enough to show he had some corporate security gig paying his bills, but not so nice that it drew attention. The kind of place where no one asked questions. He answered the door shirtless, his gym-thickened frame filling the doorway, his grin lazy and expectant. Hey, speed demon. Kira stepped inside, letting her fingers trail over his chest as she passed. Miss me? He chuckled, locking the door behind her. You know I always do. She turned, pressing him back against the wall, her hands sliding up his arms. His skin was warm, his pulse steady under her fingertips. His eyes, hazel, almost gold in the low light, met hers with the usual doby affection. But she was looking for something else. She kissed him hard, biting his lower lip just enough to make him groan. His hands gripped her hips, pulling her closer, and for a moment, she let herself fall into the familiar rhythm of him, the way his breath hitched when she scraped her nails down his back, the way his muscles tensed under her touch. But even as he moved against her, even as he muttered her name between kisses, she was watching. That flicker. That sharpness. There, when she nipped at his collarbone, his fingers tightened just a fraction too precisely on her waist. There, when she pulled back to look at him, his pupils dilated, but his gaze flicked to her wrist display for half a second before returning to her face. Too fast. Too aware. Kira smiled, slow and dangerous, and pushed him toward the bedroom. Later, tangled in his sheets, Brad exhaled like a man who'd just survived a war. Damn, Kira. She stretched, cat-like, watching him from beneath half-lidded eyes. You're getting better. He grinned, rolling onto his side to face her. Had a good teacher. She hummed, trailing a finger down his chest. Funny. You never really needed much instruction. His expression didn't change, but his pulse jumped under her touch. Got you. She sat up, reaching for her clothes. I should go. Early shift tomorrow. Brad propped himself up on an elbow. You could stay. She glanced back at him, letting her gaze linger just long enough to see it, the calculation in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Not so dumb after all. Next time, she said, pulling on her jacket. As the door hissed shut behind her, Kira's smile faded. Brad wasn't just a toy. And she wasn't just being paranoid. The game had changed. Now she had to figure out whose side he was really on. Kira's week blurred into a frenetic dance of speed and suspicion. Every delivery was a tightrope walk, her fingers flying over the hoverbike's controls, her body weaving through the labyrinth of AI traffic while her mind raced faster than her machine. She didn't write anything down. She didn't need to. Her memory had been trained for this. The stable hummed with its usual late-night energy when she rolled in after her last run. Mechanics in grease-stained jumpsuits tweaked the bike's anti-grav modules, while a few off-duty couriers lounged on crates, swapping stories and synth liquor. Kira caught Dexa's eye across the garage, a quick, knowing glance, before heading to her assigned bay. Her bike settled into the maintenance cradle with a magnetic thunk. She ran a gloved hand along its sleek frame, checking for the tiny, deliberate scratches she'd left near the exhaust ports. A rudimentary tamper check. All intact. For now. Long night, huh? Kira didn't flinch at the voice. She turned to see Rick, one of the senior mechanics, leaning against the bay's entryway. His grin was easy, but his eyes flicked to her bike's data port a second too long. Just another day in paradise, she said, popping the bike's access panel. Think you can give her a once-over before my morning shift? Felt a stutter in the lateral thrusters. Rick nodded, stepping closer. Sure thing. You know, you couriers burn these things out faster than we can tune 'em. Kira smirked. That's why they pay us the big credits. He chuckled, but his fingers lingered near the panel's edge. Yeah. Big credits for pizza delivery. There it was again. That unspoken we know. Kira held his gaze, letting the silence stretch just enough to be uncomfortable. Then she shrugged. Guess some people just really like their toppings hot. Rick snorted and turned away, but not before she caught the tension in his shoulders. Everyone's playing a part. Back in her apartment, Kira stripped off her gear and tossed it onto the floor. The cameras watched, as they always did. She made a show of stretching, rolling her shoulders with exaggerated relief, before sauntering into the shower. The water hissed to life, steam curling around her. She pressed her palms against the tiles, letting the heat sear away the night's tension. They're watching. Let them watch. She knew the rules. Knew the game. The cameras were supposed to blur the sensitive moments, but she'd long since stopped believing that. The way the security team leered at her sometimes, the way Brad's hands always seemed to linger just a little too knowingly. She'd leaned into it. Turned it into armor. If they wanted a show, she'd give them one. But tonight, as the water sluiced over her skin, she wasn't thinking about performances. She was thinking about the file. Project Mercury. And the fact that Brad, muscular, stupid, convenient Brad, hadn't asked a single question about where she'd been all week. Too convenient. Kira shut off the water and reached for a towel. Tomorrow, she'd pay him another visit. And this time, she wouldn't be the only one putting on a show. Kira's knuckles cracked as she wrapped her hands for the morning lift. The gym was nearly empty, just the clank of weights and the low thrum of synth music bleeding from the overhead speakers. Brad was already there, his back to her as he loaded plates onto a barbell. His shoulders flexed under the dim light, every movement smooth, practiced. Too practiced. She strode over, rolling her shoulders. "You're early." Brad turned, flashing that easy, vacant grin. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd get a head start." Kira smirked, stepping close enough to smell the faint musk of his pre-workout stimulants. "Or you just missed me." He laughed, too loud, too performative, and ruffled her hair like she was some pet. Yeah. You wish, speed demon." She let him play the part. Let him think she was still oblivious. But she saw it now. The way his gaze flicked to the corner of the ceiling, where one of her cameras was hidden. The way his accidental brush against her hip was a fraction too deliberate. The way his breathing never really hitched, no matter how close she got. "You're good," she thought. But not good enough. They lifted together, Brad's hand steadying the bar for her bench press, his fingers lingering just a beat too long. Kira let her breath come heavy, let her cheeks flush, played the part of the exhausted athlete. But her mind was racing. How long had he been watching her? Who was he really reporting to? And most importantly, did they know about the file? After the gym, they grabbed protein shakes from the corner synth bar. Brad slurped his down with exaggerated gusto, laughing at some stupid joke she barely registered. She forced a grin, nudging his ribs with her elbow. "Your place or mine?" she asked, licking synthetic vanilla off her lips. Brad's eyes darkened, just enough to seem eager. Just enough to seem human. "Mine. Better view. Better cameras," she translated. His apartment smelled like cheap cologne and recycled air. Kira kicked off her shoes and flopped onto his couch, stretching like a satisfied cat. Brad hovered by the kitchen, pulling 2 beers from the fridge. "You've been quiet today," he said, handing her one. Kira took a long swig, letting the bitter fizz burn her throat. "Long week. Lots of deliveries." Brad sat beside her, his thigh pressing against hers. "Anything interesting?" There it was. The question. The test. She shrugged. "Just pizzas. Though one guy tipped me in crypto." "Weird, right?" Brad chuckled, but his fingers tightened around his beer. "Rich people." Kira leaned into him, letting her head rest against his shoulder. "Yeah. Rich people." She closed her eyes, listening to the steady thump of his heart. Too steady. Later, in his bed, she let him think he was in control. Let him think she was lost in the moment. But she was counting. Every glance toward the camera. Every calculated thrust. Every performance. When it was over, Brad collapsed beside her, breathing hard. Kira traced idle circles on his chest, her nails scraping lightly over his skin. "You're different today," he murmured, voice thick with faux exhaustion. Kira stilled. "Oh." Brad turned his head, meeting her eyes. For a second, just a second, the mask slipped. And she saw it. Cold. Calculating. Hunting. She smiled, slow and lazy. Must be the adrenaline. You know how it is. Brad's lips quirked. Yeah. I know. The next morning, Kira geared up for her shift, the weight of Brad's gaze heavy on her back. She knew now. They'd played her. But she'd played them right back. As she straddled her hover bike, the engine roaring to life beneath her, she wondered. Would today be the day they'd try to silence her? Would today be the day her bike malfunctioned at 300 kilometers per hour? Kira grinned, gunning the throttle. Let them try. The elevator ride up to Gridglide's executive floors was unnervingly silent. Kira stood rigid, her reflection staring back at her from the polished steel doors, Courier leathers, gloves tucked into her belt, the faintest tension in her jaw. She hadn't been summoned upstairs in years. Nobody was. The doors slid open to reveal a sleek, glass-walled corridor. At the end, a frosted door bore the company's insignia, a stylized lightning bolt cutting through a grid line. Voluntary run. No immediate assistance. Only the best. Her pulse thrummed. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a test. The conference room was half-lit, the city's skyline glowing beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. A long table dominated the space, flanked by Gridglide's upper brass, men and women in sharp corporate blacks, their expressions unreadable. And then there were the couriers. Dex was there, slouched in his chair like he didn't have a care in the world. Next to him sat Mira, a veteran writer with a reputation for never missing a drop. A few others Kira recognized from the stable, elite, all of them. And at the head of the table, Director Vane steepled her fingers. Kira. Glad you could join us. Kira took the last empty seat, forcing her voice steady. Wouldn't miss it. Vane smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. You've all been selected for a special assignment, she began, tapping a command into the table's holodisplay. A route map flickered to life, a jagged line cutting through 3 cities, weaving between skylanes and dead zones. High risk, high reward. Multiple deliveries, no support. If you take this, you're on your own. Kira studied the map. There were stretches where the grid coverage dropped to 0. Where a malfunction would mean a very long fall. Dex whistled. What's the payload? Vane's gaze didn't waver. Classified. But let's just say, our clients are willing to pay a premium for discretion and speed. A murmur rippled through the couriers. Kira kept her face blank, but her mind raced. This is a trap. Or a purge. Or. Volunteers only, Vane added. But I'd think carefully before declining. Opportunities like this don't come often. The unspoken threat hung in the air. Decline, and you're off the roster. Permanently. Kira leaned back, crossing her arms. When do we leave? Vane's smile widened. Tonight. After the briefing, the couriers were dismissed, except for Kira. Vane gestured for her to stay. The door hissed shut behind the others, leaving the 2 women alone. You've been with us a long time, Kira, Vane said, circling the table. Top marks in reflex testing. Flawless delivery record. Kira didn't move. I do my job. You do more than your job. Vane stopped beside her, close enough that Kira could smell her perfume, something expensive, icy. You're curious. That's dangerous. Kira met her gaze. Just making sure I'm worth what you pay me. Vane chuckled. Oh, you're worth far more than that. She reached out, adjusting the collar of Kira's jacket with a too familiar touch. Be careful out there tonight. The grid isn't the only thing with blind spots. Kira's fingers twitched. Was that a warning, or a confession? I always am, she said. Vane stepped back, her smile razor-thin. Good. Then you'll have no problem proving it. Back in the stable, Kira prepped her bike with deliberate slowness. The others were already gone, likely off to their own preparations. Dex appeared at her elbow, voice low. You're really doing this? Kira tightened a bolt harder than necessary. You're not. He exhaled through his nose. Something stinks. Yeah. She glanced up, meeting his eyes. But I'd rather see the trap coming than wait for it to spring. Dex held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded, pulling something from his pocket, a tiny data chip. He palmed it into her hand. Just in case. Kira didn't ask what was on it. She just tucked it into her boot. See you on the other side, she said. Dex smirked. Try not to die before then. That night, Kira straddled her bike at the launch point, the city's lights sprawling below her like a circuit board. The route glowed on her visor, a golden thread into the unknown. Somewhere out there, Brad was watching. Somewhere out there, Vane was waiting. And somewhere out there, the truth about Project Mercury was buried. Kira revved the engine. Time to dig it up. Kira's skull throbbed with a dull, insistent ache as consciousness seeped back in. The metallic tang of blood coated her tongue, her own, probably, from where she'd bitten her lip during the crash. Or whatever the hell that net had been. She blinked against the dim light, her vision swimming into focus. Dex. His body hung suspended by thick chains bolted into the concrete wall, his arms wrenched at unnatural angles. Blood dripped from a dozen unseen wounds, pooling on the floor beneath him. His chest rose and fell in shallow, ragged breaths. Alive. For now. Kira tested her own restraints, thick polymer cuffs binding her wrists to the arms of a reinforced chair. Her legs were free, but a quick flex confirmed her muscles were still sluggish, her reflexes dulled by whatever sedative they'd pumped into her. A low chuckle echoed through the room. You're awake. Good. Kira knew that voice. Brad. She turned her head, slow and deliberate, as he stepped into the flickering overhead light. Gone was the dopey grin, the carefully cultivated oafishness. The man standing before her now was all sharp edges and coiled menace, his hazel eyes glinting with something far colder than amusement. You, Kira's voice cracked. She swallowed, forcing steel into it. You're gonna regret not killing me when you had the chance. Brad smirked, crouching in front of her until they were eye to eye. Oh, Kira. We need you alive. His fingers brushed her cheek, almost tender. At least for now. She jerked her head away. What the hell is this? Brad straightened, pacing a slow circle around her chair. You saw the road, didn't you? The real route. The one grid glide didn't put on your map. Kira's stomach dropped. The hidden path. The trap. Project Mercury, she breathed. Brad's grin widened. Smart girl. He stopped beside her hover bike, running a hand along its scorched frame. You couriers were never just delivery drivers. You were prototypes. Test subjects. Kira's mind raced, pieces slotting into place. The reflex tests. The curated schooling. The way they'd been molded for this. And Dex? She asked, nodding toward his limp form. Brad sighed, like a teacher disappointed by a dull student. Dex got curious. Like you. He leaned in, his breath hot against her ear. But you? You're special. Kira's fingers twitched against the cuffs. Special. Expendable. Same damn thing. She let her body sag, playing defeated. So what now? Brad straightened, pulling a sleek neural interface from his pocket. Now, he said, tapping a command into the device, we see what you're really capable of. The room's far wall hissed open, revealing a yawning skyline beyond, a sheer drop into the city's neon abyss. And her hover bike, humming to life. Kira's pulse spiked. They wanted her to run. But not for grid glide. Brad's smile was all teeth. Time to fly, speed demon. The moment the neural interface connected, Kira's world exploded. Raw data flooded her synapses, engine heat, thruster pressure, the electric hum of the bike's stabilizers, all of it coursing through her like a second nervous system. She gasped, her back arching against the chair as the machine's senses merged with her own. She could feel the bike. Not just control it. Become it. Her fingers twitched, and the hover bike's thrusters growled in response. Her pulse spiked, and the fuel injectors hissed, flooding the combustion chambers with a surge of raw power. The bike trembled, a caged beast mirroring her own trapped fury. Brad's laughter cut through the sensory overload. There it is, he said, stepping back as the bike's anti-grav field buzzed to life, lifting it inches off the ground. The real Project Mercury. Kira's vision split, her natural sight superimposed with the bike's 360-degree camera feed. She saw herself, bound to the chair, saw Dex's broken form, saw Brad's smug grin, all from impossible angles, all at once. Her skull felt like it was cracking open. Brad tapped the interface one last time. The cuffs around her wrists released with a click. Kira lunged. And Brad caught her wrist mid-strike, his grip crushing. "Aha," he chided, twisting her arm just enough to make her snarl. "You're not fighting me." He shoved her toward the bike. "You're fighting them." Kira stumbled, catching herself on the bike's frame. The metal was warm under her palms, alive with the same pulse thundering in her veins. "Who?" she spat. Brad nodded toward the open skylane. "Grid Glide. The ones who made you. They've been watching. Testing. Waiting to see if their little experiments were worth keeping." His smile was a razor cut. "Tonight, you prove it." Kira's hands clenched around the handlebars. They'd known. They'd always known. And now they'd turned her into a weapon. She swung her leg over the bike, the neural link flaring as her body synced with the machine. The bike wasn't just a tool anymore, it was an extension of her. Brad tossed her a helmet. "Don't die." Kira caught it, her voice a low snarl. "Tell Dex I'm coming back for him." Then she gunned the throttle. And launched into the void. The city rushed up to meet her, a blur of neon and steel. The wind screamed in her ears, but the bike's systems translated it into data, into sense, her mind processing speed and trajectory faster than any AI could. Her visor lit up with the route, a twisting, brutal gauntlet through Grid Glide's most dangerous skylanes. This wasn't a delivery. This was an execution. But Kira wasn't the one being hunted. Not anymore. She banked hard, the bike responding like a second skin, and plunged into the maze. Somewhere above, Grid Glide was watching. Somewhere behind, Brad was smiling. And somewhere ahead. Freedom. Kira bared her teeth and accelerated. The gauntlet was a symphony of chaos, and Kira was its conductor. Every twist, every dive, every near miss was no longer a conscious decision, it was instinct. The bike's systems had fused with her nervous system so completely that she no longer thought in terms of controls. She didn't steer. She intended, and the machine obeyed. A barrage of drones streaked toward her, their laser-guided targeting systems painting her bike with crimson dots. In the past, she would have had to react, to calculate. Now, her body moved before the thought fully formed. Dodge left. The bike banked sharply, her muscles tensing in perfect sync with the thrusters. The drones overshot, their munitions detonating harmlessly behind her. Climb. The anti-grav engines roared, hurling her upward as an electromagnetic net snapped shut where she had been a millisecond before. She was faster now. Better. More than human. The refuel drones appeared at precise intervals, swooping in like mechanical birds of prey. She didn't slow, she didn't need to. The neural link fed her the exact moment to extend the fuel line, the exact angle to maintain speed while the synthetic plasma pumped into her bike's reserves. Seamless. Perfect. She was no longer just a courier. She was Mercury. The final stretch loomed ahead, a sheer tunnel of reinforced alloy, its walls lined with Grid Glide's insignia. The exit was a pinprick of light in the distance. And then the voice crackled in her skull. "Kira. Director Vane. You've performed beyond expectations." Kira didn't answer. She didn't care. But the test isn't over. The tunnel's walls moved. Panels slid aside, revealing rows of turrets, old-world kinetic guns, the kind that shredded metal like paper. A kill box. Final exam. Kira's lips peeled back in a feral grin. "Let's dance." The guns opened fire. And Kira moved. The bike was no longer a machine. It was her. Her thoughts became velocity. Her instincts became evasion. Her rage became thrust. Bullets became afterimages. The tunnel became a strobe of muzzle flashes and screaming metal. She didn't dodge. She flowed. The exit rushed toward her. The last turret spun up. And Kira twisted, her bike flipping sideways as the final barrage screamed past her, missing by millimeters. Then. Light. Open sky. Silence. She was through. The bike settled onto a landing pad, its engines cooling with a metallic sigh. Kira's breath came in ragged gasps, her body trembling with the aftershocks of adrenaline and neural overload. Before her stood a row of figures in black. Director Vane at the center. Brad at her side. And behind them, Dex. Alive. Smirking. Vane stepped forward. "Welcome to the next phase, Kira." Kira's fingers tightened on the handlebars. The game had changed. Again. But this time? She was the player. Kira's fingers twitched toward the bike's controls, not to flee, but to attack. Dex's smirk widened, as if he could read her thoughts. "Easy, speed demon," he said, holding up his hands. His voice was different now, smoother, sharper. The lazy drawl was gone. "You really think I'd let them hang me up like that if I wasn't in on it?" Vane stepped forward, her polished heels clicking against the landing pad. "Dex was our first successful neural integration. But you, Kira." She gestured to the bike, still humming beneath her. "You're the best we've ever seen." Kira's jaw tightened. So all of this, the voluntary run, the ambush, the damn chains, was just another test? "A final exam," Vane corrected. "We needed to see how you'd perform under real pressure. No safety nets. No second chances." Brad shifted beside her, his usual swagger replaced by something more subdued. Almost apologetic. Kira's glare burned into him. "And him?" Vane sighed. "A necessary deception. We couldn't risk you confiding in someone outside the program. So we provided controlled companionship." Brad shrugged, his stupidly perfect face annoyingly sincere. "For what it's worth, I did enjoy the workouts." Kira wanted to punch him. Dex chuckled, stepping forward. "Relax, Kira. You're one of us now. Really one of us." "One of what?" she snapped. Vane's smile was razor-thin. "The future." A holographic display flickered to life beside her, showing a map of the megacity grid, dozens of routes, flashing red where standard couriers had failed. 70% success rate isn't good enough, Vane said. "Not for what we move. Government secrets. Corporate blackmail. The kind of data that starts wars, or ends them." Dex crossed his arms. "Regular couriers get intercepted. Hacked. Bought. But us?" He tapped his temple. "We're the only ones fast enough. Smart enough. Connected enough." Kira stared at the bike beneath her, at the neural jack still humming in her spine. She'd been played. But she'd also been chosen. Dex extended a hand. "So? You in?" Kira looked at Brad. At Vane. At Dex. Then she revved the bike's engine, her lips curling into a smirk. "What's the pay like?" Vane laughed. "Oh, Kira. You have no idea." Kira's life had settled into a rhythm, one part mundane, one part lethal. Most days, she was still Gridglide's top courier, zipping through the neon arteries of the city, delivering pizzas, or at least, boxes that smelled like pizza, to the ultra-rich. But once or twice a month, the real work began. The connected runs. The neural link hummed in her spine as she sliced through the sky, the bike's systems an extension of her own reflexes. Data streams flickered in her periphery, encrypted manifests, threat assessments, the occasional blip of an intercept attempt. None of them ever came close. She was too fast. Too integrated. Tonight's run was smooth. No ambushes. No drones. Just the wind screaming in her ears and the city's glow bleeding into the horizon. Boring, almost. Brad was waiting at her apartment when she got back, sprawled on her couch like a discarded jacket. He grinned as she walked in, all teeth and practiced charm. "Long night?" Kira tossed her helmet onto the counter. "Not long enough." She eyed him, the familiar bulk of his shoulders, the deliberately vacant look in his eyes. Once, that had been enough. Once, she'd liked how simple he was. Now, she just saw the act. Who knew her type was actually dumbass? Brad reached for her, his hands warm and heavy on her waist. "Want me to help you unwind?" Kira almost laughed. "Unwind?" As if she could, knowing he was just another grid-glide plant. Knowing every touch, every groan, every performance was just part of the job. But what was the alternative? Another assigned distraction? Another actor playing the role of just dumb enough to keep her from asking questions? At least Brad was good at his job. She shoved him back onto the couch, climbing over him with a smirk. Sure. But this time, try not to fake it. Brad's grin faltered, just for a second, before he laughed, loud and empty. Wouldn't dream of it, speed demon. Later, as Brad snored beside her, Kira stared at the ceiling, her fingers tracing the neural jack at the base of her skull. She could cut him loose. She should cut him loose. But then what? Gridglide would just send someone else. Someone new. Someone whose tells she didn't know yet. At least with Brad, she knew the game. Her wrist display buzzed, a new message from Dex. Next runs tomorrow. High priority. Don't be late. Kira exhaled, rolling her shoulders. Same sky. Same bike. Same lies. But at least when she was flying, she didn't have to pretend. She tapped a reply. Wouldn't miss it.